welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host and AEW enthusiast, Doug, and today's episode I'm going to be discussing Dynamite Grand Slam edition, September 21st, 2022. So Grand Slam is a bit of a special it's a TV special that AEW does, and I think it started last year. It started last year, and it continued this year, and honestly, I don't see why they don't keep it going forward. This show was headlined by a match between Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley to crown a new AEW World Champion. It had a nice little surprise debut. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action, starting with the Ring of Honor World Championship match. Claudio Castagnoli versus Chris Jericho. And in the end, there was a cheap low blow from the Wizard, then a Judas effect that added yet another world title to Jericho's resume. So the match between these guys was good, with an outcome that's more of a head scratcher than intriguing. This seems less like a long-term plan for the future of Ring of Honor, and more like another accolade for Jericho's resume, which is unnecessary given how great it is. He's a legend, but he probably wins far more than he should have in AEW. Rather, Castagnoli should have got a win here, as that would have cemented his reign as champion, but instead he loses, albeit in a tainted fashion. But still, this loss kind of diminishes the momentum he had coming off his debut and his title win as well too. So now it makes you wonder what he's gonna do next as well too. He might just come back for the title, maybe, but ultimately Chris Jericho would be Ring of Honor World Champion. It's not really interesting. He should not have won here. But I guess we'll see what happens next with Jericho. And, Daniel Garcia didn't seem overly enthusiastic about it, so maybe there's still a story there. That as well. AEW World Tag Team Championship match, The Acclaim versus Swerve and Our Glory. So miscommunications between Strickland and Lee and some interference from Billy Gunn gave way to The Acclaim, realizing their potential and winning the titles. Now, Caster did appear to suffer an injury. Don't know if it's an actual injury or if it is, how serious it is, and it did kind of slow down the match a bit. But I think what really helped this match was the crowd energy, as they were more than ready to see the Acclaim capture the gold, and the Acclaim remained into this match, the crowd remained into this match even as the match kind of fell apart down the stretch. With that said, though, this match only had one right outcome, and Tony Khan and company needed to book that outcome, and they did just that. And now the first homegrown tag team in AEW get to hold the gold in AEW. So congrats to the Acclaim on becoming tag team champions. I'm so glad to see it too. I've been a big fan of the Acclaim, and I've been waiting for them to get that win. The timing felt right, and now I'm interested to see what they do with Swerve and Lee. Do they keep these guys together as a tag team, or do they send them their separate ways? My guess would be send them their separate ways. They have value as singles competitors, and ultimately they won the tag team titles, so it's not like you really need to keep them together as a team given how stacked your tag team division is. And then the show concludes with a Tournament of Champions final for the AEW World Championship, Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson. And with the win here, Moxley is the first guy in AEW history to win the company's world title on 3 separate occasions. There's no interim label this time around, and nor should there be. Punk was stripped of the title, and really there was no way you were going to put an interim label on that. Moxley, whether you like his in-ring style or not, has been the backbone of the roster for the last year. He's been as reliable and consistent as anyone on the roster, and he embodies the type of us versus the world mentality that helped make AEW possible in the first place, and was such a key mentality for that company starting off. I don't know if they still have it, but he still embodies it nonetheless. Now, putting the belt on him again, maybe not the most electrifying booking move, and it certainly won't make the Paul Danielson crowd happy, but in the end, when you have one guy, Danielson, who has a well-documented history of injuries, and the other guy who doesn't quite have as long of an injury history as the other guy, it's kind of easy to see who you would go with too. And also too, I guess it's a way to make it up to Moxley too, you know. You booked him to beat CM Punk, to become the AEW World Champion for the second time, you know, get rid of the interim label and become the, you know, actual champion. And then he loses to Punk and All Out, and then there's the brawl, backstage brawl that gets CM Punk suspended and stripped of the title. You know, it kind of felt like this was Tony Khan's way of making it up to Moxley for that. Would have liked to see Danielson be world champion, but Moxley winning kind of makes sense. And I also talked about how AEW like foreshadowed it with, you know, the interactions between Moxley and MJF. And also too, AEW needs stability at the top of the card, and with Moxley they can get just that, and with MJF they could also get that as well too, at least until 2024, unless something gets worked out ahead of time, which maybe not. Yeah. I do feel like MJF probably is going to bolt to WWE in 2024, but, you know, maybe Tony Khan's able to do something, but at the very least MJF still has the chip. He's still getting his world title match. There's a battle royal on Rampage to determine a number one contender, which seems entirely pointless because whoever wins that battle royal is not going to beat Jon Moxley. So the whole thing is just entirely pointless. But I guess it's a way of keeping Moxley busy, and you know, MJF kind of hanging around in the background until Full Gear, which that's the only way I can see them for the reason for doing this battle royal. Is you want to say Moxley versus MJF for Full Gear so MJF can win his first world title on a pay-per-view stage. Understandable. And if that is the case, then I guess the battle royal makes sense. Yeah, and then as for the surprise debut, Saraya, formerly known as Paige in WWE, made her debut in All Elite Wrestling, and, you know, the assumption is that she's going to be an in-ring competitor in the ring, which honestly, I'm looking forward to that. I've been a fan of Paige, and I was so disappointed to see that she, you know, had her career kind of got cut short by neck injuries. It's always a tricky business, but as Edge and Daniel Bryan kind of proved that, you know, they seem career ending at first, but with enough time, you know, if you want to come back, if you're determined to come back, there's a chance. And, you know, for Edge, it took 9 years. With Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, I think three years, maybe. I don't quite remember. Christian's another one too. I don't think he had a neck injury, but Danielson didn't have a neck injury either. But both of those guys, Danielson and Christian, dealt with career-threatening injuries, or injuries that did, you know, like end their career, but it didn't end it permanently. And for Paige, well, I guess her career was not ended permanently. Thank goodness. It appears that she'll be getting a chance to compete in the ring in AEW, but a lot of people like to criticize AEW and its women's, in the booking of its women's division, and I guess in a way I can understand it. I thought about talking about the Fatal 4-Way match for the interim AEW Women's World Title, but it wasn't even really that good of a match. You know, it wasn't terrible, but compared to everything else on the card, it certainly wasn't the most interesting thing. And, you know, the most interesting thing was what happened after the match. But she's a great addition to the division, and, you know, I'd like to think that President Tony Khan and company can figure something out as well too. You know, again, I do understand some of the criticisms in regards to the booking of their women's division, but I think they'll figure it out. You know, they got the talent. They got the talent. So, you know, I'm like I said, I'm sure they'll figure something out. And yeah, I'll just quit rambling on now and go ahead and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.